Today's lesson for living is really pretty simple. Everything that we have, all of our stuff, our possessions, are a gift from God. And because it is, or they are, we should be, number one, thankful. And number two, finding God praiseworthy for all of these things and having a relationship with God so that we say, okay, now I've got this stuff, what should I do with it? It kind of segues from what I talked about last time I was in front of you when we talked about righteousness and self-righteousness, our sense that we have accomplished something, and therefore we can be right with God because of what we have done. And oh, how wrong that is, that any righteousness, any standing with God that we have that is good is not because of anything that we have done. Because we fall down, we fall short. It is only because of what Jesus did for us that we have any hope. That song that we sing, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. We sing it, we don't always think about what it means. But as to our stuff that we think we have accumulated and lose sight of where it comes from, we go down the same wrong path. It's that simple. So, this will be a short service, right? I mean, for an LP FTD, you can't expect a whole lot, so. Our lessons tie together, so let's look at them. We go back about 1,000 years before Christ in the book of Ecclesiastes. Now, it's in my training that when I'm reading something, I like to know who's writing it, who are they, what is the setting, the context. I better understand the validity of what they're telling me if I know these things. So, Ecclesiastes, what's this about? Well, the author is King Solomon. And I'm sure most of you, not all of you here, have heard of Solomon, Solomon's wisdom. Well, King Solomon, again, about 1,000 years before Christ, was a son of King David, probably considered the greatest king of ancient Israel. And like his father, Solomon was becoming a king at a fairly young age over this great kingdom. And if you read in 1 Kings, you'll find that Solomon had a dream, kind of the way Jesus or God spoke to others. He spoke to Joseph in a dream, telling him about Mary being pregnant, and later about, you got to get out of Bethlehem because King Herod wants to do harm to you. Well, this was Solomon's time. He was this young king, and the Lord came to him and said, ask what you would have me give you. Pretty heavy-duty question, and Solomon said, give me wisdom. Give me the power of discernment, that is, the ability to tell the difference, to discern between good and evil so that I might be a good king for your people. And the Lord was very happy with that request. And the Lord responded by saying, I will give you wisdom. And with that, many other things. And I think all of us have heard the story of Solomon's wisdom. There were two, I believe, prostitutes who became pregnant, had babies. And in the night, one of them slept on her baby and it died. So she did a switcheroo, switched her baby with the other baby. And unfortunately, then the mom wakes up and finds a dead baby and looks at it and, this isn't my baby. And the two of them end up in front of King Solomon, each claiming to be the mother of the infant who was left. And of course, there was no DNA, no blood tests. So Solomon is hearing their pleas, and he says to a soldier, give me your sword. We're going to cut this baby in half, they'll each get half. And one mom didn't strenuously object, and the other mom said, please, no, save the child. She can have the child. Let the child live. And Solomon had his answer. He knew who the mother was. And word of Solomon's wisdom spread throughout the kingdom. Now, I said Solomon also, besides wisdom, the Lord gave him many other things, and what he got was incredible wealth. It is said if you read 1 Kings, there's one chapter, the heading says, the wealth of King Solomon. He was incredibly rich. It is said that he received an annual tribute of 660 some talents of gold. Now, if you or I had a talent of gold, we would be multi-millionaires. A talent of gold is about 75 pounds of gold. So do the math real quick, times 16 ounces, times about $1,300 an ounce, times 660 some odd talents, and you're talking $900 million as one source of income that he had 3,000 years ago. Palaces, fleets of ships. One place I read, he gave a sacrifice of 1,200 sheep and 200 oxen. Literally had money to burn. So it is this person who has seen the extreme of an abundance of earthly possessions and wealth. And what does he tell us? The pursuit of these things is vanity, the vanity of vanities. Sounds nice. I've heard it before. What does it mean? I mean, I understand vanity, piece of furniture. No, not that. I understand vanity, that characteristic that somebody else has. They're vain. One of my favorite 70s songs, Carly Simon. You're so vain, you probably think this song is about you. Don't you? Don't you? I like that line. Well, I digress. Anyway, it's not that. Vain. Vain is what is futile, what is pointless, what is worthless. And the vanity of vanities, the futility of futilities. What are you doing toiling under the sun, working hard, staying awake at night, worrying about things? Where is it going to get you? And this is from a guy that has it all, telling us that old saying, it isn't going to buy you happiness. So we get this from a pretty good authority who has it all, that it isn't going to make you happy. Now, I do have a question about his wisdom. He also had 700 wives and 300 concubines, lovers. So, I mean, he chose his own problems as well. But maybe those 660 some talents of gold came in handy. It's a lot of anniversaries. But he was an authority about having it all, and he's telling you, folks, 3,000 years ago, it isn't going to make you happy. And if we look at the psalmist, about that same time, long before Christ, said the same things. People bragging about what they've done, what they've accumulated, and where is it going to get you? Can you buy more time? Can you buy somebody else's life? Modern day example, Steve Jobs, incredibly talented, bright man, worth billions of dollars. Could he buy more time on earth? No, he could not. It just won't do you any good to the extreme. It won't. There's only so much you can do with it. So now we move forward to the time of Jesus. And we know what Jesus did. He walked amongst the people. He taught. He healed. He performed miracles. And he's out there and he's gaining this admiration and respect of the people. So finally somebody says, and I'll assume it was a man for the purposes of this morning, said, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the family inheritance with me." Well, I like Jesus' response. First of all, he says, "Who made me judge over you?" He didn't want my job. And for those of you who don't understand the inside joke, I'm a judge. And this is one of those things, this is one of those problems that come before the courts all too regularly. Fighting over the family inheritance. Fighting over the family farm. I will tell you, folks, that the most vicious, sad, ugly contests that I have seen in my courtroom are brothers and sisters who still may send each other birthday cards and Christmas cards, but in court will be seeking sanctions and telling me to throw that bum out of here, and the money is mine because that's what Dad wanted. And it's really, really ugly, and Jesus understandably didn't want any part of it. But then he goes on to tell a parable about greed. And what struck me about this when I was reading this in preparation for this morning is this. The person didn't say, Jesus, I need some money. My neighbor has all this stuff. Can't you get him to give me some? I mean, it would be more fair. It wasn't that kind of request. It was, tell my brother to share the inheritance with me. And that, on its face, seems to be a pretty decent request. So why is Jesus coming back at him with a parable about greed? Well, first of all, we all know that Jesus knew the people he was dealing with. You remember the stories of when he was picking his disciples and he'd start telling them things about themselves that they never, he'd never met them, and how did they know it? And, oh, wow, this guy is special. He must be a prophet or something because he knew this, this, and this about me. And I will tell you that I'm sure he knew this individual. And there was something about this individual that Jesus felt compelled to talk about greed. Perhaps, one scenario, perhaps this person had been just waiting for Dad to die. I wish that guy would just kick off so I can get my share of the money. I got plans. I got things to do. Not a lot of love there. Or perhaps this person was a spendthrift. Perhaps money went through his hands like water. And maybe Dad knew that and said to his other son, you know, I don't want a bunch of money to go to your brother because it will just destroy him. Kind of like the other parable, the prodigal son, you know, go off, eat, drink, marry, gamble, prostitutes, the whole 9 yards, lose it all. Perhaps he was a spendthrift. We don't know the story, but Jesus knew. And so he wanted to address everyone, and in particular, this individual. So he tells a parable about greed. The next thing that's interesting, and this is, I think, a real important lesson for us when we have this Lutheran guilt about accumulation of wealth, or we buy a new car, or we have a new suit or outfit, or some other way we spend our money. Having goods, having things, is not a curse. It's a blessing from God. He enriched many people. Abraham, Solomon, as a couple examples. You read the book of Job. Job was a very wealthy man, lost it all, but at the end of the story is wealthier than he ever was before. So obviously God isn't trying to make them sinful. No, there is nothing wrong with having things. And what's demonstrated in that is when Jesus doesn't say, look out for wealth. Instead, he says, take care. And in other translations, I have seen the word beware. Now, if you're standing in the street and a truck is coming, somebody doesn't say, beware of the truck, or take care that you don't get in the way of that truck. They tell you to get out of the way. No, the way that he's phrasing it is saying, it may not be obvious to you that truck may still be out of sight and around the bend. Having stuff, having goods, okay, that's all right. But beware, take care of greed. And then he tells this parable about the very successful agribusinessman who's had a good year, and obviously had had good years before this, and now he's got all this stuff, grain, and it's all coming in, the harvest, and what do I do? Well, what did he not do? He didn't say, thank you, God, for this wonderful harvest. Instead, it was, what should I do with all this stuff? I got to keep it. I'm going to need it someday. He didn't pray to God for any kind of direction of how should I use this abundance? How can I serve you, Lord? Instead, it's, see now, I got to have all this. I know, I'll build bigger barns, more buildings, more sheds. I'll have it, it'll be there. Now then I can sit back, put my feet up, have a drink, eat plentiful, and life is good. Hello, your life is over. Tonight. How you feeling about all those goods now? Those goods that, as it was said in Ecclesiastes, as it was said in the Psalms, as it was said by Jesus, are going to probably end up in somebody else's hands. Or they will. And they may not deserve it, but what's it going to get you now? Jesus, at a different time and place, was approached by a lawyer. Yeah, leave it to the lawyers. Has a trick question for him. Okay, Master, what's the most important commandment? Trick question, of course. And Jesus said, first and foremost, love God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind. And right after that, the second, love your neighbor as yourself. All the books of the Bible, all the laws that are there, everything the prophets have told you, all wraps up in those two simple commandments. Something that I tell the kids in confirmation every year. It's all that simple. Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And therein is the guide to what to do with your stuff. First of all, you recognize that it's from God. And you give thanks because of that. And then, like Solomon, you ask for some wisdom, some discernment. How best do I use it? For my family, for my friends, for my church, for my God, for my pleasure. Give me that gift. And, it always amazes me, too, how God, in Jesus' teachings, flip things. And it's the way our life is. We see the price tag on so many things. And then in the end, the things that matter most, there is no price. They're priceless. The sound of laughing children, the smell of Grandma's kitchen, the hugs of a loved one. You can't buy any of them. Good health, you can't buy it. So, Jesus is telling us to look at things rightly. Know what we really, really want and how we should use it, how we should share it. There was one other reading I want to read briefly for you, and it's from Deuteronomy, and it's now going back even another 1,000 years or so. And this is Moses. And he's not going to make the promised land, and he's trying to tell his people as they go forward what's important. When you have eaten your fill and have built fine houses and live in them, and when your herds and flocks have multiplied, and your silver and gold is multiplied, and all that you have is multiplied, then do not exalt yourself forgetting the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. He goes on to say, do not say to yourself, my power and the might of my own hand have gotten me this wealth. But remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you the power to get wealth, so that he may confirm his covenant that he swore to your ancestors, as he is doing today. So these lessons go way back, at a time when people didn't have all the knowledge and technology that we have today. But the lesson is the same. When things are good, don't forget where they come from. In our house, in the laundry room, is a little saying. It says, the best things in life aren't things. That says it all. And Jesus was telling us that 2,000 years ago, and it was said thousands of years before that. Know what matters, then you truly will find happiness in this life.